After a couple of street tracks in the USA kicked off this series, it naturally feels only right that we get our teeth into what the rest of the world has to offer. Australia has some iconic street circuits in its motorsport history: Adelaide, Sydney, and of course Albert Park. Yet despite this, it isn't immune from the street track failure syndrome. Canberra, the capital city that everyone seems to forget, is the capital city of Australia. The place, home to around 450,000 people, is located in a hilly region of the country, around 100 kilometres from the east coast, and in 2014 was named the best city to live in the world. However, in 1999, Canberra's regional government put forward a proposal to stage a round of the V8 Supercars in the city. The decision was made to stage the event, in a deal that would last 5 years, beginning in 2000. The government thought the idea would work based on how successful the Adelaide Street race was in terms of it gaining local and also global notoriety. The track itself would be designed by 5 times V8 Supercars champion and 6-time Bathurst 1000 winner Mark Skaife. Plus, a location for the race was also sought. And this wasn't around a random car park or roads only on the outskirts of the city being used. It was roads that went around key landmarks of Canberra, including the current and former Parliament houses and the National Library of Australia. Although I somewhat get the feeling the usual library etiquette of being quiet will have to be abandoned for the weekend. All in all, the signs were good. A keen local government for the event to be held, an eager racing category also wanting to hold the event, a diverse support series roster to keep the action going throughout, and a driver who knows what a good racetrack is designing it. All whilst utilising roads that go around landmarks that will help advertise Canberra to Australia and indeed the wider world. The inaugural event even had an attendance of 101,000, not bad for a first time event. Sadly, the one thing that makes a street track location iconic is a great street track. This one has a few problems. Firstly, as you can quite plainly see, it's barely wide enough for 2 cars to fit side by side. In the previous episode, we went over the Miami Bayfront Park Street Circuit and how it was about as wide as a set of binoculars. Well, Canberra makes the Bayfront Park track look width-wise like the Kalahari Desert. However, for me, one of the big problems seems like spectators being able to see the action. Or rather, some of the action. The amount of spectators having to peer over fences to just get a glimpse of the action, and in turn the amount of areas where there's next to no public watching whatsoever, where presumably there was no access to the public for them to see the action in those areas, looks exceptionally high. To be honest, there doesn't seem a lot in terms of grandstand space. Certainly if you were to compare it to the success that Canberra was trying to base its success upon, Adelaide, there are far less areas where spectators are able to see the action, and indeed grandstands that are able to carry the vast numbers of fans trying to watch what they paid hard-earned money for. Also, turn 1, especially on the first lap, just turned into a massive bottleneck where you couldn't go anywhere. I mean, a lot of the Formula E races have a lot of problems with the first corner on the first lap with trying to get all 20 of those cars through the corner as cleanly as possible. Try that, but with 30 plus enormous Australian V8 saloon car bruisers trying to fit in a corner that's barely suitable for a Formula 4 car to fit through at speed. Another issue that developed was the leaves falling onto the circuit, which, considering how much shrubbery Canberra has, it's quite a lot of them. That's also important to factor in when you take into account that the date for this race was early June. To most of the world, that's an ideal time to hold a race. In the land down under though, June means wintry conditions are on their way. All of these factors meant that support for the event was starting to dwindle. The attendance was getting smaller and smaller by the year. For 2002, the figures for the amount of spectators in Canberra had dropped from 101,000 to 89,000. Not only that, but the original budget that was thought would be enough to hold such an event was getting higher and higher. After an annual subsidy of $2.5 million rose to $4 million and then subsequently $4.7 million, an audit was published as to whether the event was achieving the purpose it was set out to achieve. The opinions it set out were rather damning. The 2000 and 2001 races had significant negative economic results, The economic impact for the 2000 and 2001 races were overstated, and that the net cost of hosting the 2001 race was almost twice the forecast cost. A new Australian government was brought in for 2001, with the decision to make the 2002 event go ahead. But as the attendance was getting worse, with the almost 5 degrees Celsius temperatures being a key put-off for the fans, and the amount of money being spent on putting the race on being a key put-off for the government, the 5-year contract was cancelled, meaning that the race would not be held in 2003 or 4. To be honest, it was probably for the better that the contract was terminated early, because the track had so few passing zones, with narrow roads to match, that it wasn't a popular event among fans or drivers. However, why on earth was this track so bad? It had an iconic driver in Mark Skaife designing it. Surely he would know how to create an awesome racetrack. Well, whilst I'm in no doubt that Mark Skaife can design a good track, a person is only as good as the tools they've been given. And the tools that Mark had when it comes to what roads he had available to try and make a good circuit were nigh on impossible in trying to make a circuit where passing was more than a faint reality, or indeed a circuit that would be thrilling to drive around at breakneck speed. It's a bit like asking Gordon Ramsay to make spaghetti bolognese using only flamethrowers to cook them, or asking Damien Hirst to make a 50-foot sculpture using only toothpaste. Could they do it? Yes. Could they do it well? No, no matter how talented you are at your craft. It wasn't just a poor track that let the Canberra street track down, because had it been in a better time of the year climate-wise, it could have led to more favourable outcomes when it came to attracting more visitors, which ultimately would have made the cost of hosting the event less of a burden on the government and the people who live in Canberra. It was an event that had many positives on paper, but ultimately, when the concrete barriers and grandstands were put up, the event was too greatly flawed to be a successful street track, especially compared to Adelaide. That's going to be it though for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Did you think this circuit deserved a longer tenure, or was it right to end it there and then? Say what you think in the comments section, along with other failed street tracks you'd like to see videos on. However, until the next video, enjoy the rest of your day.